All right, let's dive into one of the Bible's most enduring puzzles. It's a story that kicks off with this really brief, super mysterious encounter, but it ends up spanning almost 2,000 years of history. And in the process, it shapes these huge ideas about kingship, priesthood, and even justice itself. So picture this. In the book of Genesis, we meet this incredibly powerful priest king. He shows up, meets the patriarch Abraham, they share some bread and wine, he gives this profound blessing, and then poof, he's just gone, vanishes. We never hear from him again in the entire Genesis story. It's like he was a complete ghost.
Now, you might think this is just some ancient cold case, but no, it's so much more. It's a full-blown theological detective story. We're talking about a single, contested word and the reclaiming of this incredibly powerful idea, an idea that echoes from the ancient world all the way to the New Testament. So let's crack this case together. All right, so our story kicks off way back, around 1800 BCE. We're in Genesis chapter 14, in a scene that's super brief, but man is it packed with meaning. And trust me, the details here, they're absolutely everything. So who was this guy, Melchizedek? Well, the text tells us he's the king of a place called Salem, which we're pretty sure was an early Jerusalem. He's also a priest of God Most High. He blesses Abraham, and in return, Abraham gives him a tenth of everything. Now here's what's so wild. He fuses the roles of king and priest. That's a huge deal because later in Israel, those two roles were kept strictly separate. So right from the get-go, this guy is a total outlier, a completely unique figure.
And get this, his name, Melchizedek, holds the key to the entire mystery. It all comes down to one word, ṣedeq. Now it can mean king of righteousness, which sounds pretty straightforward, right? But in the ancient Canaanite world, it could also mean my king is ṣedeq, where ṣedeq wasn't just a concept, but the actual name of a local deity. And that single possibility, well, it completely transforms this from just a simple meeting into the backdrop for a huge theological battle. Suddenly, this isn't just a name, it's a claim. It's the central point in a religious contest over the very definition of righteousness.
Okay, so this really gets to the heart of the conflict. You see, in the Canaanite world, righteousness, ṣedeq, could literally be a god's name. All your legitimacy, your authority, it flowed from these local gods and their priest kings. But the Bible, it's about to make this totally radical counterclaim. It's going to say, nope, true righteousness isn't a title owned by some local deity. It's a gift, and it comes directly from Yahweh.
And then, just one chapter after Abraham meets the guy whose name means king of righteousness, the narrative lands this absolute knockout punch. It says Abraham trusts Yahweh's promise, and Yahweh counted it to him as righteousness, as ṣedeq. The story is basically screaming at you, hey, that word you just heard, ṣedeq, it doesn't belong to some Canaanite god. It belongs to Yahweh, and he's the one who gives it to those who trust him. It is a total reclamation.
Okay, so after that, the trail goes completely cold for about 800 years. Nothing. Melchizedek is totally absent from the story. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, in the Psalms, his name pops back up in this absolutely stunning prophecy about a future king. And he's not just a historical person anymore. He's become something more. The plot thickens, right? Because he's now being used as a pattern, a symbol for this ideal future ruler who would be both king and priest. That little brief appearance in Genesis, it's now the precedent for something way, way bigger.
So the crucial point here is that this future king's authority wouldn't follow the normal rules. See, in Israel, the priests had to come from the tribe of Levi. It was a rule set in stone. But this king, he would be a priest after the order of Melchizedek. What does that mean? It means his legitimacy comes directly from a divine appointment, just like that ancient priest king from Salem. We're talking about a different, older, and honestly more profound kind of authority. So you can really see how the interpretation of this mysterious figure just evolves so dramatically over almost 2,000 years. I mean, we go from a brief historical encounter to a pattern for a king, and as we're about to see, it's going to morph into something else entirely. All right, let's jump forward in time again. We're now in the period between the Old and New Testaments. And here, in documents like the Dead Sea Scrolls, speculation about Melchizedek just explodes. It goes into absolute overdrive. The writers from this period, they took all those mysterious little details from Genesis and that royal prophecy from the Psalms, And they just ran with them. I mean, they went for it. In one text we have, he gets elevated from a human priest king into something way more cosmic, way more powerful.
Yeah, he basically becomes an apocalyptic superhero. Seriously, he's no longer just a man. He's portrayed as this angelic, heavenly judge who's going to carry out God's final judgment, liberate the captives, and lead the armies of light against the forces of darkness. He's practically a divine figure himself.
So this dramatic promotion, it created a brand new puzzle, right? If this figure is so powerful, so central to God's final plan, then who or what is he exactly? And that question, it sets the stage perfectly for the final act of our detective story. And this is where it all comes together. The New Testament book of Hebrews, it takes all of these threads. You've got the mysterious priest king, the royal psalm, the cosmic judge, and it weaves them all together to give us the ultimate and, frankly, most surprising answer to the puzzle of Melchizedek. The writer of Hebrews makes this absolutely brilliant argument. They say, look, all those gaps in the Genesis story, they're not accidents, they're clues. The fact that the Bible never mentions Melchizedek's parents, or his birth, or his death, that's all intentional. It's designed to make him seem like a figure whose priesthood is eternal, without beginning or end. And this creates a pattern, a shadow, that was always meant to point to someone else. And that right there, that's the key that unlocks the whole mystery. Melchizedek was never supposed to be the main character. He was the blueprint. The Bible presents him in this very specific, very mysterious way for one reason, so that he would resemble the Son of God, kind of like a preview for the true, eternal high priest. It's actually a really powerful analogy if you think about it. You absolutely need the blueprint to understand the final building, right? The blueprint is crucial, but you don't live in the blueprint. Melchizedek was that divinely crafted shadow, designed to help us recognize and understand the real thing when he finally arrived. So when you look at the whole picture, that brief 3-verse encounter was really the start of this amazing theological thread that runs through the entire Bible. It starts with Yahweh reclaiming the very definition of righteousness from a world full of rival gods, and it ends by showing how that mysterious priest king was a signpost, pointing all along toward a final, perfect, and eternal priest king. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets, what other grand, sweeping narratives are just hiding in plain sight in these ancient texts, just waiting for someone to connect the dots and rediscover what they really mean?